On February 26, 1959, a search party on a bare mountain slope in the Soviet Union found a tent half buried in snow. It belonged to 9 missing ski hikers. The tent was still pitched. Inside, everything was in order. 9 pairs of boots standing in a row, jackets folded, food laid out, a camera, diaries, money. But one detail made the searchers go quiet. The canvas had been cut open from the inside. Whatever happened here, 9 experienced hikers had slashed their way out of their own shelter and walked into a night of minus 25 degrees, most of them in socks, some barefoot. Their footprints led downhill, away from safety, into the dark. None of them ever came back. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident. 65 years later, it is still not truly over. The 9 came from the Ural Polytechnical Institute in Sverdlovsk, and they were anything but beginners. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was 23, already a veteran of long winter treks. The group around him, 7 men and 2 women, students and young engineers, had trained for years. Their plan for the winter of 1959 was a route of the highest difficulty grade, 300 kilometers, on skis through the northern Urals, in temperatures that regularly fell below minus 25. For young Soviet hikers, a trek like this was a badge of honor. They packed wooden skis, a canvas tent, wool and fur, a mandolin, cameras, and their diaries. Those diaries and cameras survived, and that is why we can follow their last days, almost hour by hour. The photographs show a happy group, snowball moments at the train, grinning faces in the forest camps, the flat white silence of the Urals. The diary entries joke about who snores and who is in love with whom. They even wrote a little mock newspaper in the tent, dated February 1st, with the headline, Evening Otorten, after the mountain they were aiming for. There is one more detail from those first days. The group had actually been 10. At the last inhabited outpost, a young hiker named Yuri Yudin fell ill and had to turn back. He waved his friends goodbye on the edge of the wilderness. That decision made him the only member of the Dyatlov group to grow old. On the 1st of February, the group climbed out of the forest and onto the open shoulder of a mountain the local Mansi people call Kholat Syakhl. In their language, the name is usually translated as Dead Mountain. A storm was pushing across the slope. Visibility dropped, and instead of retreating into the trees, they made a calculated choice. They dug a platform into the snow of the open slope, pitched the tent, and settled in for the night. It was exposed, but it saved altitude for the next day. The last photograph on their film shows exactly this: dark figures bent against the wind, digging into the snow. Then the film ends. The group was expected to send a telegram from the far side of the route, around February 12th. The date came and went. At first, nobody worried. Winter treks ran late all the time. But as the days kept passing, the families began calling the Institute, and the Institute began to understand that something was wrong. By the 20th of February, the search was on. Volunteer students on skis, local Mansi hunters who knew the terrain, military planes and helicopters sweeping the white emptiness of the northern Urals. It was one of those student volunteers, a young man the hikers knew personally, who spotted the dark shape on the slope of Kholat Syakhl on February 26th. He skied up to it, saw the cut canvas and the boots inside, and in that moment the rescue mission quietly became something else. What happened in the following hours is the actual mystery. The physical evidence says this: at some point that night, the 9 cut the tent open from the inside, left their boots, their coats, and every piece of survival equipment behind, and moved downhill. Not in a blind sprint, The footprints, preserved in the snow for weeks, showed a group walking in a more or less orderly line, in socks, at minus 25 degrees, away from their only shelter. Whatever drove them out of that tent, it was terrifying enough that nobody stopped to grab boots, and yet they did not scatter in panic. They walked together, 1.5 kilometers, down to the tree line. What followed can be read from the mountain itself. At a tall cedar, at the edge of the forest, they managed to start a small fire. Branches on the tree were broken off up to 5 meters high, as if someone had climbed it, perhaps to look back toward the tent through the dark. It was around this fire that the cold took the first 2 of them. 3 others, Dyatlov among them, were found later on a straight line between the cedar and the tent. They had turned around. They died, walking uphill, into the wind, trying to get back to their equipment. The remaining 4 did what trained hikers should do. They moved deeper into the forest, dug into a ravine, built a floor of branches, and waited. When searchers finally found them in May, under 4 meters of snow, the mystery turned darker. 1 had a fractured skull. 2 had chests crushed with a force the medical examiner compared to a car crash. And yet there were almost no external wounds. The Soviet investigation worked the case for 3 months. Murder was considered and dropped. There were no other footprints on that slope, and nothing had been stolen. The local Mansi were briefly suspected and quickly cleared. Then came details that refused to fit any simple story. Instruments showed traces of radioactivity on individual pieces of clothing. Other hiking groups in the region reported glowing orbs of light crossing the night sky in those same weeks. In May 1959, the lead investigator closed the file with a sentence that has haunted this case ever since. The hikers, he wrote, died because of a compelling natural force. The files were sealed. The area was closed to hikers for 3 years, and the Soviet Union simply stopped talking about it. The silence did the opposite of what it intended. Over the decades, the Dyatlov Pass became the most argued about cold case in the world. The theories fill entire books. An avalanche, said some. Except the slope was gentle, the tent was only partly buried, and the footprints below it were untouched. A secret weapons test, said others, pointing at the radioactivity and the lights in the sky. Infrasound from the wind wrapping around the dome of the mountain, producing a frequency that triggers raw panic in the human body. Even the tidy Soviet formula, a compelling natural force, began to sound less like a conclusion and more like a confession that nobody knew. Then, 60 years later, the case officially came back. In 2019, Russian prosecutors reopened the investigation, and in 2021, 2 scientists published a study in a Nature journal that finally gave the avalanche theory teeth. Using snow physics, crash test data, and, of all things, the snow animation code developed for the Disney film Frozen, they showed that a small, delayed slab of wind-packed snow could have slid onto the tent hours after the platform was cut into the slope. A slab like that would not bury the tent. It would press down on sleeping people braced against a hard ski floor, which is exactly the setup that produces crushed ribs and skull fractures with barely any external wounds. In that version of the night, the hikers cut their way out to save whoever was injured, retreated downhill expecting a bigger avalanche, and were then killed, one group after another, by the cold they had fled into. The official answer today is a slab avalanche, followed by hypothermia. Many experts accept it. Many who have studied the case for decades do not. No trace of a slab was ever documented at the site. The footprints show a calm descent, not an emergency retreat. And a study, they argue, can show that an avalanche was possible, not that it happened. The pass where the 9 died now carries Dyatlov's name. The surviving photographs, the diaries, the mock newspaper dated February 1st, all of it is preserved in a small memorial museum, tended for decades by people who refused to let the case rest. Yuri Yudin, the man who turned back, spent his whole life as the keeper of his friend's memory. He died in 2013, and he was laid to rest beside the memorial that carries their 9 names. 9 experienced hikers left a warm tent through a hole they cut themselves. And every explanation we have still leaves one question breathing. What exactly did they see or hear in that first moment? The mountain has never answered. Some mysteries are like that. No witnesses, no way out, no ending. And some are the opposite. In 1971, a quiet man in a business suit hijacked a passenger plane over America, collected $200,000, and jumped out of the back of the aircraft into a rainstorm at night. He was never seen again. It is the only unsolved airline hijacking in American history. That story is next. Thanks for watching.